Michael, let me talk about further into our criminal justice system, prisons, direct correctional services facilities. We know that many people come out of our prisons even more hardened than when they went in. And this is in part due to the entrenched gang culture inside our prisons. We can call prisons a university of crime. That's my belief. But there was a parliamentary question asked to the Minister of Correctional Services last week about what the Department of Correctional Services is doing to curtail the numbers gang in our prisons, which have become part of local prison culture, but also what tentacles prison gangs have in reaching gangs out on the street. But in the reply, it was quite interesting, the minister revealing that the number of gang-related incidents have been, in fact, on a steady decline as a result of what's known as the gang combating strategy. And in less than 10 years, the numbers went down from 1,035 incidents reported in 2014-2015 to this year, only 271 incidents observed in this period, this year. It's now October, still 3 months left of the year. So what are these changes brought about as part of a gang combating strategy? I'm speaking to Singabakho Nxumalo, who is a spokesperson for the Department of Correctional Services. Good morning, Singa. Really appreciate your time. Firstly, tell us, what is the Department of Correctional Services gang combating strategy all about?
Hey, very good morning, and thank you for having us. I think before we go in there, it's important to highlight that the country has a strategy that is called the National Crime Prevention Strategy. And then all agencies within the JCPS cluster, which is crime prevention, then draw up their strategies from that, because what the National Crime Prevention Strategy was to address is to have a comprehensive approach towards dealing with crime, where efforts are coordinated and resources are shared, and we're also able to share even information, because there are always links, in the work of the criminals. So even as a country, to have one vision. So when you look at the gang combating strategy of the Department of Correctional Services, it draws from the National Crime Prevention Strategy. Hence, even then, it says correctional services alone will not win this battle. It stresses the importance of working with other agencies within the crime prevention structure, but also the role of civil society and just general communities. So, because what you often find with gangsterism is that you will find it more entrenched in the communities, and that will then reflect in our correctional facilities. And I think the reason why we've managed to reduce numbers is because we picked up that correctional centers have typically what is known the number gangs, whereas communities have moved towards street gangs. And then you always find the two, and then you can't just say correctional services will deal with just number gangs, whereas communities out there have new gangs that have come to the fore. So as a department, it is always about looking at what's happening outside, working with our counterparts, and have a strategy that is working for the country.
We have about between 140, 150,000 people serving time in our correctional services facilities. Do we have a breakdown?
We've moved to 261,000, which is a concern.
261,000. Do we know how many of them are in some way connected, affiliated to the numbers gang? How many gang members in our prisons?
You see, that's an interesting question, because when inmates are admitted, not all of them will declare that I belong to a gang. You'll only see by the activities that they do, or at times about incidents that are often reported. And certainly some are then recruited once they're inside. But what we do as a department during the induction, we alert them to these dynamics within our correctional facilities, and to say they must always be on the watch out. and how to prevent and discourage them from affiliating into gangs. Because what gangsterism does, it then leads to our officials being assaulted, stabbed, and all manner of things, or inmates even fighting amongst themselves. So it then becomes very difficult to say this is the exact number, because dynamics all change all. I mean, things change all the time. Hence, I talk about that dynamism. Because what we've also picked up is that the closer to the festive season, hence we always have what we call Operation Vala. That's when gangs are very active in terms of recruiting, trying to increase their base. And we always want to be a step ahead by making a point that our officials do pick up when those activities start to happen and then prevent such from taking place.
1,035 incidents in 2014, 2015, 732 cases in 2021, 2022, and this year, I'd say with an asterisk, only 271 incidents. What would be considered a gang-related incident inside a correctional services facility?
As I said, these incidents will differ. You will find that an official was assaulted using perhaps a sharpened object or or an object that an inmate, will want to use. Even a broomstick, they will use such. And some of these will find that inmates will fight amongst themselves. And when you do an investigation, that's when this information is brought to the fore that it was gangs fighting. Or you may find that inmates fought and then one was stabbed. And then to say for them to settle the score, it means they will have to spill the blood of an official, which is something that, we discourage at all times. So that's when then you're able to collect this information and then put it into a report. And the reason why you always investigate incidents happening in our facilities is because we want to differentiate to say what is the cause and what was the objective, so that we'll know exactly what is it that we are dealing with, so that you don't find a situation where you just treat an incident as if people are just fighting, only to learn later that it's related to gangsterism.
I've spoken to several historians of gang and gang culture. I've spoken to criminologists who say the department can't ever root out completely a phenomenon of the numbers gang, so deeply entrenched in a prison system, but also actually entrenched in South African history, the history of the numbers gang, the 26, 27, 28 roots from Nongolozo, which a historian like Charles van Onselen actually says was also part of anti-colonial liberation, which starts within prisons and then gets morphed into what we see it today. So many people say DCS can't ever root out the numbers gang. All it can do is to control, give a little bit of freedom so that it manages itself within prisons. Do you agree with that? Or is it a part of the strategy of the DCS to root out the numbers gang in its entirety?
To answer your question, for as long as we have gangsterism within our communities, that will find its way into our correctional facilities. I often define gangsterism like a virus that mutates, for survival. Why am I saying this? You go to Cape Flats, you go to a number of places, even in Gauteng. You then have for instance, in Free State, you have a gang called BTKs. It's young boys, and the things that they do is horrific. And you are even able to pick up that it's more rife after the initiation period. Then you have to go in there and zoom what is happening there. Why is there a peak after the initiation period? And even other places, even in Gauteng, why do we have this new type of street gangs? And once they're in our correctional facilities, how do they then adjust, or do they form other gangs? Hence, our strategy is not just looking at the number gangs, because we fully understand that has transformed into something else. I will just give you an typical example. We moved to one inmate, well-known offender from Ebongweni, back to the Western Cape. Within a day, the province was up in arms saying that you have to take this guy away from Western Cape, because having him here, you are going to see a lot of flare up in terms of gang turf war. So it's things that, always have to look up for as a department.
That's right. That's George Gewalt Thomas. He was a gang leader in the Bishop Lavis area, convicted under poker legislation to life in prison. He was then transferred to a Supermax Correctional Services facility in KZN. There was a transfer here to the Western Cape, which the new Minister of Correctional Services, Peter Groenewald, says that's not going to happen. He has been retransferred, I think, to Gauteng. But gang member rehabilitation, does that take place in our corrections? Do they consult with social workers? Do they consult with any form of rehabilitative process for someone who says, I don't want to be a member of the gang, but for my own personal safety, I'm in fact forced to, and that's not a life that I want to lead when I eventually leave a correctional services facility?
Yeah, we do have former gangsters that have transformed into living a normal life. But you do find those who are saying, look, I'm willing to change. I cannot live this life forever. I want to, make a positive contribution. But they'll also be frank in saying, once I'm out back in the community, I am then faced with a number of challenges. Yeah. And sadly, we've seen some of them being killed. And because some do believe that once you are in it for life, for you to leave the gangs is by that. So it's all these complexities that we are dealing with. But when they engage with our specialists, they do make it clear that, I will want to change. Some will even ask that when placed out, they will prefer to be taken to another area. But the challenge is that we cannot place a parolee in an area where we cannot confirm an address. But the moment they pick up that this person is out and is living in that area, some will go for him in saying that, no, you ought to come back. So for as long as we are not winning the fight of the outside, then community, it's going to be difficult for us as correctional services. But hence it's always that we share notes. And when some of the, let's say, so-called well-known gangsters are to be placed out, we also engage with communities, the police and other structures in saying, this person has served the time, is ready to be placed out and is willing to change. Can we then create a safe landing, for this person so that it doesn't go back into the life of crime?
You're very right, Singer. It's difficult to change an individual, but not change the community in which that person lives in, and makes the process almost futile. Really appreciate your time. Singabakho Nxumalo is a spokesperson for the Department of Correctional Services.